So thanks for joining, folks. I really appreciate you all hopping on. I know there's quite a few of us in here, so we won't have time for full introductions, but just kind of wanted to introduce myself, provide some background on this project and this tool and what we're hoping to get out of this training here. So my name is Nick Alcaraz. I'm an assistant research scientist for the Center for Spatial Analysis at FWRI over in St. Pete. I've been co-leading the data management team for the SETLD FCRP response for about the last 7 years now, myself and Renee Baumstark, also from FWRI. We have a small team also that works within our same section. That's Luke McEachran, Dave Cohan, Christina Malika, and I think that's all from our team who are on here right now. For this project, so I guess a little background on that is that this started maybe two to 3 years ago. The idea for this, because around mid to late 2010s, there was a similar decision support planning tool called the Marine Planner, which was focused on Southeast Florida. It had data sets from all the Southeast in there that allowed managers and researchers and practitioners to visualize the data and be able to use it to make management decisions. If I'm not mistaken, that tool went into the development of the Kristen Jacobs Coral ECA. So that tool, it served its purpose, and it did hang around for a little bit, kind of in the background. But at some point, the developer of that tool, I think their company went under, and so it was being decommissioned. And so we got a request from DEP to see if we could, build a similar tool, but expand it and, expand the focus from Southeast Florida to, the entire Florida's coral reef. In doing so, we wanted to make the tool more flexible so that it wouldn't just be focused on one certain management decision. You'd be able to bring in different data sets and maybe have like different sub-modules for, questions that, not only current questions, but questions that might come up down the line. So the initial take of this system is going to be informing, potential coral restoration sites. But we do want it to be flexible enough that, if there's questions or decisions that need to be made on like where to place artificial reefs or water quality questions or, seagrass restoration and things like that, eventually we'll work towards being able to have that all within this single contained system. But like I mentioned, right now, the initial take is just mostly focused, or it is focused on coral restoration questions. The system and this project is not meant to replace or override any existing projects that are taking place. So, things that like FCR3 and Caitlin Lustig and all the work that TNC, the great work that they're doing with the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 prioritization. This is just meant to be another tool in the toolbox. We can take in, the outcomes of those decisions and processes and have that within the system. So all the data layers and stuff like that are available, and we can kind of build on these build on these questions and like I said, have the data available for folks to make use of. So I believe with that being said, in addition to the folks from FWC that I mentioned before, there are a couple other main teams. We have, the team from DEP, who's ensuring that we're lined up with, with their goals. So that's, Kylie Morgan, Brittany Swinich, and Kathleen Cezea, who are on the call as well. We have a team from Nova Southeastern University who are working on developing the database that's kind of the meat and potatoes that the system works off. So that's Brian Walker, Maya Becker, and Sammy Buckley. And then we have the tool development team. So that's Will McClintock and Chad Burt from UC Santa Barbara. And they have their software system, C-Sketch, which has been developed and expanded for our needs for this project that we're working on right now. So before we jump into anything else, did anyone have any questions about background or Well, I guess, sorry, while you're all here, you've been highlighted as, potential either users of the tool or folks who can contribute data to it. You really are our first round of beta testers outside of our small team. So what we're looking for in this training is, to train you up on this tool and really get you guys to try to break it. If there's things that don't work the way they're supposed to, or they're not parts of the tool that are not like inherently, that either they make sense or they're easy to use, or you wish you had more data or a different way to work with the data. That's all the information that we're trying to kind of extract from you folks, after this training. I will mention that we are looking for a quick turnaround with our feedback. We're hoping to get all of your comments in by the end of the month. So that's 2 weeks from now, Monday, March 31st. So I will be doing a lot of pestering to get those comments in. But I mean, any way you want to send it works for us, whether it's bullet points or screen shares or, however you want to send it over to me, and I can kind of aggregate that and get that to the folks, to Will and Chad.
So actually, Nick, I'll
Sure.
share the link in a bit, but
Okay.
we actually put together a Google form with some feedback, or to solicit feedback. So I'll circulate that at the end of the call.
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate you putting that together. Cool. So it looks like Brian jumped on. So before we kind of have the other teams just provide a little bit of background about your part of the project, were there any initial questions about, where this came to be, or the goals, or anything like that? Awesome. Then I may pass it over first to Brian if you'd like to discuss the data side of things, what your team has worked on developing, and what you've put together and how it kind of fits into the overall project.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Nick. So our team's been trying to assemble different data sets that go either update them or create new ones that will go into this initial version. The layers are compiled for a specific area just to incorporate the Florida Reef Tract and its surrounding waters. But we have brought in lots of different layers from state and other agencies, federal agencies where we can, where they're updated. And then we've created some on our own. We're bringing those layers in as visual layers into the GIS, so you can click on them and see them, and you can click on multiple and see how they interact. And we're also pulling in the data behind those layers to help with a filtering, spatial planning unit filtering method. So I think we'll see that as we move forward with the training. I will say we've had some we're waiting on a few updates of different data layers. So some of the things might be temporary as we move forward into getting finalized data sets. One in particular will be topographic features, because we're looking for consistent topography across the entire reefscape. We're waiting until we get the state of Florida's most recent bathymetric surveys that incorporate the entire region. And then we're going to calculate those topographic stats. So in the meantime, we're going to have topographic stats that are in there that are sort of accurate, but just more so representative of what you might see as we progress. Nothing else is coming to mind. So if I miss anything or anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. We're trying to provide metadata for every layer so that you can click on it and read the descriptions and know more about where it came from or who to contact. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Brian. All right. I think unless there was any other questions, I might pass it on to Will and Chad.
Sounds good. Let me share my screen. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Will McClintock. I'm a senior fellow at the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis. I'm also one of the principals with the Spatial Collaborative. And so I'm excited to show you this project, Coral Reef Decision Support System. It is a tool that's built on the CSketch platform, which is a software service. The software service has been, this particular version has been alive for about 4 years, and the previous version was alive for 10 years, and before that it was Marine Map. So we've got, it's sort of, this is it's maybe 16th year. Pretty stable platform, we're proud to say, and pretty flexible. So excited to see how it works for you, and as Nick said, excited to hear if you can break it and what recommendations you have for improvement. So as I mentioned, we've got a feedback form that we're going to circulate at the end of this training, and I'd appreciate your honest feedback. I kind of want this to be an interactive training, so I'm going to very quickly give you an overview of the tool, but then we're going to I'm going to demonstrate something, and hopefully you'll just take a few minutes to try it out yourself, so that during this training we can begin to answer some of your questions that might arise from the experience. So I'll just go through that very quickly. I'll cover certain features. Chad Burt, who's our lead developer, who I've been working with for 17 years, he'll take over and talk about other features. But I think we've got a small enough group that if you want, you can break in anytime and ask questions. So to begin, so the Coral Reef Decision Support System sits at atop, as I said, csketch.org, and the URL for the decision support system is just csketch.org/CRDSS. That will take you here. And there are things that you can do with the tool without creating a login. For example, visualizing data layers. But because we want you to do some things that do require a login, I'll walk you through that sign-in experience in just a second. But there are data layers, base maps, under maps, data layers, sketching tools, and there's 2 different kinds that we have for this project. I'll show you both of those, or Chad will. Discussion forums, and you should only be seeing this one beta test workshop. That is our discussion forum for today and the next couple weeks, just for experimentation. A sign-in, a link to the sign-in, and a language switcher. And right now, this just switches between English and Spanish for the interface. The data layers and other content have not been translated, so that's just up there for demo, really. There's also a link to the user guide, and right now this links to a generic user guide. So this doesn't talk specifically about the Coral Reef Decision Support System. It's just generic, but should be helpful stuff in there. And Chad, did you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, eventually I'd like the more custom tailored documentation to be linked through that link. That'll be updated soon.
Great. Okay. So, as I said, certain things you got to, if you want to do them, you got to log in. So, for those of you who haven't, if you would, please go to csketch.org/CRDSS and click sign in. Come on, baby. There we go. And then if you don't have a CSketch account, you can click sign up. Choose any email address and any password, and then log in. I think, Chad, you get an email confirmation, right, that you have to answer?
You will get an email confirmation, but you don't necessarily have to. You'll be able to use the tool immediately.
Okay. So log in, and if you would, let's see, what would be a quick way, Nick? I'm not familiar with Teams, and in Zoom, I'd have everybody raise their hand once they were finished doing something. But is there any way to get quick feedback from people on whether or not they've successfully logged in?
Yeah, I mean, there should be a raised hand function. We could try that also.
Okay. All right, let's give it a shot. So just take a couple of minutes for everybody to go ahead, create an account if you haven't, and if you have, just log in. And that way you'll be able to do everything that you need to for that training. If you're ready, raise your hand. All right, I think that's the vast majority of us. So go ahead and lower your hand and we'll move on. So good. So with the platform open, you should see again maps, most of you, and Mapbox style sheets or base maps. They should be quickly loading and have each of their own kind of benefits to them. So choose whichever one you like. Just make sure that's working for you. Should be pretty straightforward. And then let's move to overlay layers. So some of these data are pulled dynamically from services that are provided by, for example, NOAA, and other are data that are actually sitting in the CSketch database that have been added by an administrator. We'll go over these in just a second once I finish kind of going over the overview. Now that you're logged in, you should be able to see this sketching tools, create, coral restoration site, filtered restoration site, and folder. Chad will go over those again. You still should see the beta test workshop forum. I'm logged in with permissions to see other forums, so I can see those. You won't, unless you're an admin. Your profile is kind of handy to fill out at some point, not necessarily now, to let people know who you are and what your affiliation is. This is information that can be useful to those who are reading any forum posts that you might make. Then you can sign out and get the user guide. Okay, so back to overlay layers. So here's an example of data that are not hosted in CSketch. They're coming from NOAA. You probably are familiar with them. Here's a virtual station with a, an outlook on coral here. It links to a website that explains what the data mean, where they're coming from, how they're created. And then associated with that same service are some data on things like sea surface temperature, right? So it's global in this case, so a little coarse maybe for you, but still useful. And I have my legend open, so I can see a legend for these layers. I can hide the layer from the legend. I can change opacity. I can even download the data and view metadata all from the legend. Likewise, this is the same menu. I can zoom to bounds, view metadata, download, move up and down in the stack, right? And again, change opacity. So that's a dynamic layer coming from a service. And then, there are lots of data in here, which I think are pretty nifty and useful. They should load pretty quickly for you. They're tiled data sitting in the CSketch database, so very quick to turn off and on. Whole layers or whole folders can be turned off and on by just clicking on the folder. So, and as Brian said, we're working on getting more and better metadata in here, but if you right click on a layer and choose view metadata, you'll pull up the metadata that often has links to outside sources. What I'd like for you to do now, if you will, is just take a few minutes to explore these layers. I should mention that you can search for stuff. So habitat will bring up a variety of layers. And you can also hit reset layers and it'll turn everything off. A couple other things. This little cog icon, if you click on that, will also have a reset view, show scale bar, and a measurement tool, which right now is just distance in a few different units, kilometers, miles, nautical miles, and meters. So what I'd like you to do is just play around with that a little bit. Turn some layers on, see if you can read the metadata, mess around with these basic tools here. And we'll just take 3 or 4 minutes for you to explore. And then I'd like to, just hear if you had any issues or if you have any questions. We'll just pause there and feel free to, as we're growing, as we're waiting, as other people are working on this and playing around with the layers, just post stuff in the chat if that's easiest for you. So Nick, do you see that question from Renee? Does this coral and hard bottom habitats layer include the most recent URM data?
Dave, I'm thinking no, right?
Yeah, not yet. We're still updating all the web services.
The services, yeah. Okay. But very, very soon.
Chad, looks like there's a question from Nick too in that chat for you.
Yeah, I believe the sheet 1 data that layer is supposed to be removed. I'm not sure what. Yeah, I must have accidentally skipped over that one. Then Brian asked if it's possible to change the order of layers.
Yes.
They're displayed. Yeah, we can change the sort order of how the layers appear in the layer list. And we can also change the default stacking order for how they're visualized. And then, of course, as we'll demonstrate at the end user can make fine tuning of the way that layers are sorted when visualized if they have a particular combination of layers that makes more sense to stack one way versus the other.
Yeah, so just to access that tool either in the legend or over in the layer tree, as we call it, by right-clicking, moving front and moving to back. Okay, I'm going to assume that everybody's had enough of a chance to kind of play around a bit. Any issues that came up? Any problems loading data or metadata? Great. Then let's move on to sketches. And this is where I think I'll turn it over to you, Chad. You're still muted. There you go.
All right. Can you see my window?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So the sketching tools tab. So if you're in overlays, you'd click on this icon here or open the full sidebar to open up the sketches tab. This is like your personal workspace within C-Sketch that contains all the design tools. So right now we're focused on coral reef restoration, but as Nick mentioned, we could do seagrass restoration, or we could tackle within this one interface. We could tackle quite a few different problems using this. We have this concept in the tool called sketch classes, which is like a feature class, and it can be used to represent any number of different design tools. And so for coral reef restoration, we are working with two different complementary tools. The first is the filtering tools, and those let you set criteria for restoration sites, and then visualize all the different places that might match those criteria in real time spatially on the map. And so, for example, you might want to select sites that are less than 20 meters in depth and have greater than 80% hard bottom habitat. And that would, all those areas would show up on the map. The other piece to this are the coral restoration site polygon digitizing tools. And so that lets you get into the practical matter of among those suitable places, where specifically am I going to place my restoration sites? And then once those are created, you can share those in the forum, kind of collaborate with other users within the tool. And you can also view analytical reports on those polygons. And so you might see a report that shows you what habitats are within the polygon, the result of dive surveys, species richness and density, and human activities like monitoring sites or reef injury sites. So these two tools are meant to work together, and I'm going to demonstrate both of them, and then we'll give you a chance to play around with these yourself. So I'll start with the filtering tools. So the entire reef tract has been divided up into 7.4 million cells, each of those being about 44 meters in diameter. And for each of these cells, Brian and his team have been encoding properties on water depth and habitats and human uses, all these different properties for each different spatial cell, so that these filter tools can then be used to query that database and show just the cells that match the criteria that we set using this tool. Designed it to be really fast and immediately show feedback as you change your filtering criteria. The hard part, the real hard technical limitation, is in displaying all those cells on the map. We can't show all 7 million at once, and so this view is dynamic in that you'll see lower resolution cells when zoomed out. So in this case, we're looking at 5.7 kilometer diameter cells. But as we zoom in, this scale indicator in the upper part of the form will update to show you what scale we're looking at until we get all the way down to the full resolution 44 meter cells. And so I'm going to give this set of cells a name. I'm just going to call it restoration site suitability design A. And I'm going to go ahead and start filtering these cells. Right now they're all yellow because they're all matching, because I haven't set any criteria. All the criteria are grouped into these thematic categories. And so let's say for my restoration sites, I want them to be, I don't know, no more than 3 miles from the coast, 3.5 miles from the coast. Just as a practical matter, it's easier to work on these places if they're not too far away. And also, let's say I don't want them closer than 1/2 mile to shore because I don't want swimmers disturbing things or something like that. So I can set those criteria using these sliders, or I can go ahead for numeric properties, set them with this direct number input here. And for all these different properties, you're going to see, at least for the numeric ones, a histogram that gives you an idea of the data distribution throughout the range of the database. And I can go ahead and turn this filter on and off using these switches, so I can see the effect that my filter is having. And then I'll just go through a couple of these filters in different categories. Let's see, for biological, say I'm doing coral restoration. I want to pick places where there's at least a little bit of coral. I'm going to say I want at least 30%. Oops, I got to change the other way though. Set the minimum to 30% coral cover. So if I know coral's there, it's going to be at least somewhat suitable. And you'll see now that the color's changing on these cells. Some of them are yellow, and that's going to indicate that it's a complete match, in that even at lower resolution, all the cells within that lower resolution cell are a match. The green indicates that it's a match, but it's a partial match. And so if I zoom in until I get to the highest resolution, I'll see what areas are the true matches at the highest resolution. But again, as I zoom out, the color indicates how many of those cells within the broader area match. And lastly, I'm going to say I don't want to do any restoration work within, I don't know, 5 miles of a sewer outfall, because I just don't want to be diving in that area. And all right, so now I'm going to go ahead and so it's looking like out of those 7+ million cells, about 500,000 match the criteria that I've specified here with the outfall distance, reef cover, and distance from shore. And that's just my first design. That's going to save to my account. This is, again, not shared with anyone yet. This is my own personal workspace. If I want to make a filtered set of cells that covers criteria that match for one species of coral versus another species of coral, I can do that. I can set up different criteria to select sites for a different institution that has different ideas about how sites should be selected. I can do that. I can make as many different designs as I want and save them to my account.
You could also copy that that design, right, and modify call it design B or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll make a copy right now, edit that, and say, I don't know, I'll turn off the sewer outfall distance filter and save that. And that'll show a different set of cells.
Cool. So should we pause here, Chad, and let folks try out the filtering tool?
Yeah, let's take a break and do that.
All right, yeah, so go ahead and try that with your, since you're all logged in, you should be able to create a new filter, just as Chad did, and explore it a little bit based on sort of your knowledge. What's a good way to filter the data to find places that you might want to restore coral? And if you have any trouble or any issues, just post it in the chat. When you feel like you've got a handle on it, go ahead and raise your hand.
I have a question. Can you only pick one coral species at a time?
Oh, you're probably looking at the
Am I in the wrong place?
yeah, we haven't covered that one yet.
Okay, okay.
So you're gonna want to go to create new filtered restoration site cells. I'll discuss the coral restoration site polygon digitizing next.
Okay.
Yeah, Chad, for Diego's question there, of those parameters on, filtering a cell, can you pull the metadata from that view there, or would you have to go back to the layer list?
You would need to go to the layer list. That's a very good question, though.
Nice suggestion. That when you're filling out the feedback form, maybe provide that feedback. That it would be nice to be able to access the metadata from this filtering menu.
Something to notice as you're using this form, it can get it's a long list of filters and it'll grow longer as the grid data set is developed. And so you can collapse and expand these groups to hide the fields. And if you have a filter active in any of these groups, you'll see this blue indicator so that you don't have something activated that you're in and forget about it within this group. You can easily get to it by looking for those indicators.
Chad, there's another question in the chat. Can you click on any cell and see all the cell attributes for all layers?
You can't click on a cell. That's definitely something we could explore.
So yeah, theoretically though, each cell that's shown just fits the attributes that you've selected in the filter. But the second part of the tool, which we'll get to, will then you can get the reporting on like the underlying data within those cells.
Right.
Yep. I'm assuming folks are churning away here. Just a reminder to raise your hand when you feel like you've had enough. Great. So that's most of you, I'd say. Chad, I think it would be safe to kind of move on to the next part.
All right. So the filtering tools let you see at a high level what areas might be suitable for the restoration work you're doing. But when it comes down to planning for specific sites, this tool is designed to help you draw polygons for what particular sites you want to work in, share those in the forum, and collaborate with others about where to place these sites, and also get analytical feedback on the suitability of those particular sites. So that for that component of this, you can go into the sketching tools and say create new restoration site. And so I'm going to call this restoration site A. And I'm going to pretend I'm working out of Nova Southeastern University. My boat's in the harbor here. And so I want to choose a site that's near the harbor. I don't want to be too close to this area where there's boat traffic. So I'm going to pick a site up here. My filtering tools have told me that these areas around this spot are suitable. They're far enough from shore, but not too far. So I'm going to pick this site here. And I'm going to say that this site is for Orbicella annularis. This form, and in fact, everything you're about to see is really kind of a placeholder. It's meant to demonstrate the technical capabilities of the tool, but we're really looking for we're looking for your feedback as practitioners and how this can be helpful. This whole data entry form is extremely customizable. I can rework this form in 15 minutes using the administrative tools. If we want to add like a comment section to understand more about the context of the site, if we want to change the target coral species entry to multiple select, or that isn't even appropriate to set potentially, we can rework this quite a lot. And we can also even have multiple different sketch classes to represent different restoration sites by being set up by different institutions. We have a lot of flexibility here, but this is the general workflow. So I'm going to create a restoration site, and again, it gets saved to my account. I can copy it, edit it. I can export it as GeoJSON, so I can use it in desktop GIS. And the cool thing about these polygons is I can now view a custom report about that site. And that's going to analyze this particular polygon, and working from the layers in the overlay list, as well as the filtering grid data set, it's going to give me some stats on what's interesting about this polygon. It's very much a placeholder, and I'm looking for feedback on how this can be improved for your particular use case. But with the data I had, I'm generating a report on what habitats intersect with this polygon. So it's a good amount of coral reef versus hard bottom. And I can, wherever you see these switches, you can turn on and off the layer that it was used to generate this part of the report. So that gives me an idea of the bottom habitat. What could be very much of note here is that there are already some artificial reefs in the area, and this gives you an idea of what materials those reefs consist of. You can click on these and see useful information like when it was deployed and the exact coordinates. For organism data, there's some dive survey data found within this polygon. Looks like it's showing one coral species present at 6 of these sites. Some indicators of species richness and density of both fish and corals. And I can turn on and off those layers. If you'd like to view the metadata, you can always find those layers in the overlay list and right click on it, view the metadata. Oh, this one was a work in progress, so that needs some metadata added to it. And then what else can I turn on here? Show human activities. There's some reef injury sites in this spot. And no dive sites present, but there is this, I think, a recreational dive site nearby. So that's useful to know, make sure that there's not going to be recreational divers kicking over your coral transplants. Yeah, and so these can be, and we intend for there to be a lot more customization of these reports. Like typically when we're working, like Will and I do a lot of marine protected area planning work with C-Sketch, and we'll have criteria encoded into these reports, such as a site needs to be a certain number of square kilometers in order to count as to meet minimum size guidelines. It needs to capture a certain amount of habitat to count as a replicate for that habitat in a marine protected area network. There's all these criteria that we set to help people work towards better designs for their plan. And I think we can do the same thing with coral restoration. If there are, if you were to select a certain species, when digitizing this site, you want to restore a certain species, and it has a certain range of depths that it does best at. We could display the depth ranges in this polygon here and relate it to that target. If there's a certain amount of wave exposure it can handle, we could report out on that in the reports and flag if it's too exposed of a site to be suitable for that particular species. We're looking for feedback in that area to support the further development of this part of the tool.
So Chad, sorry, just a quick question. When you sketched that site, you were not looking at the filtered results from your previous exercise, were you?
I was, but I just turned it off, so it was
okay.
Too busy
Gotcha.
of a display.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we can take a pause here and to play around with the digitizing tools.
Great,
So
sounds good.
Create your own, you would just go to create new coral restoration site. And then you can start filling out the form, or you can start clicking on the map to digitize a new polygon.
Excellent.
One
Yes.
thing I
Go
didn't.
ahead. Go ahead, Chad.
One thing I forgot to mention is if you draw over the land, it'll go ahead and clip your shape to the land so that you're only drawing a polygon over the water.
Cool. So yeah, have at it, folks. And again, post questions in the chat. And when you're satisfied, you got the hang of it, go ahead and raise your hand.
Hey, Will, while we're hanging out, I was just curious, is it possible that a sketch could contain multiple polygons?
Yeah. So, Chad, I don't know if you've worked on this, but we can create a sketch class called a collection, and you could sketch a bunch of different restoration sites and put them into that collection, and then analyze that collection as a whole. So it's like a folder, but analyzable, if you will. Um, how easy is that to do, Chad?
Yeah, that'd be pretty straightforward.
Right. So yeah, if that's
Cool.
useful
Yeah.
to you, Brian, we can make it happen.
Well, I'm just thinking, yeah, that you'd probably get many answers, many different spaces that you'd want to kind of sketch out and then get an attribute table from. So that, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's something we do a lot in MPA planning, right? Trying to create a network. So we can make it happen. And so I see just 3 hands up. So I guess that means some of you are still working away. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Well, I think that's great. You guys can keep working away on that, but maybe now we'll just move on to the last feature I wanted to go over, and that is forums. So this is a tool that's intended to be provide features for collaboration. So if you're working with somebody else, colleague of yours, and you want to share some designs or share some map bookmarks, the place to do that would be in discussion forums. So as I said, when you're logged in, if you have permissions to see and write to forums, you should see them listed. I'm an admin, so I can see more than the rest of you mostly. The one that you should be seeing is Coral Restoration Working Group. So if you click on that, in this case, there's no discussion topics yet. So I'm going to create one that says post your, let's see, let's call it filters and restoration sites. Post the filter and the restoration site you created here. I'm just posting a message inviting you all to post the things you drew. And the way you do that is by going in here into the forum, Coral Restoration Working Group, finding my post, and then writing a response and sharing sketches. So you could share, here's a filter that I created earlier. There's also a restoration site, so I can choose those both. I could also just choose the folder that contains both. And it's probably a good idea to maybe create a map bookmark. Let's see, that's my sketch. It's my restoration site. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on this one. And I'm also going to create a map bookmark. Okay, so the nice thing about that is it shows the state of the map. When I shared my message, and it's a little funny, shouldn't be churning like that. What's going on there? Might have a little bug there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's forget the map bookmark for now and just post your message with your filter and restoration site. So Brian's posted one. I can turn it on, zoom to it. I can view reports associated with it. And I can even copy a link to that and send that link to somebody in an email. If I think Brian's got a good idea here, I want to share it with my colleagues via email, this link will bring them right there. And because it's a public forum, anybody will be able to see Brian's idea. I should mention that we can also create private forums. So the administrators to this tool can create an unlimited number of forums. So if you have a coral restoration working group that you'd like to just have private access to a forum and share ideas back and forth, we can create those kinds of forums for you. So go ahead and try this. Brian has done it already. Go ahead and try and share one or both of your sketches in the forum. Just want to make sure it's intuitive for you, or if it's not, to hear that feedback.
And I was just wondering, does everyone have access to the Coral Restoration Working Group forum or just to the beta test workshop forum?
Oh, beta test work. You're right. It's the beta test workshop. I had those flipped. So now you should see a new message. Everybody should see a new message in that beta test workshop. Right, Nick, thank you. And see something that we might want to think about is you can choose to view reports on a filter, which brings back.
Yeah, I need to hide that.
Great, Christina, Nick. Okay, so Christina's got a filter. Interesting. Don't see any filter results. So let me check that out. I'm going to copy it, edit it. Oh, now I'm seeing it.
Yeah, we might have a little bug there too. Wouldn't
Yeah.
be a good demo without some bugs.
Of course. All right, Renee. Got a site. Great.
So I just realized you can run an attribute report on a filter. Do you guys, it's not working properly though. I was just wondering
Yeah,
if that was
that was the bug we were just discussing. So I think Chad was suggesting that he would hide this report, but I guess it could.
Seems like the thing to
attributes.
do here would be just to have a report that showed what the criteria were set to.
Right. Right.
I think it could be really beneficial to have the report, but maybe we'll think about that a little more. I assume the report would just be the base cells, right? Not the cells at a given resolution, but
Yeah,
the
it would be hard to do overlays like we are with the polygons, just because the filter.
No, we wouldn't want to. I think, but it would be cool to get a report out of just the polygons selected in a filter.
Yeah, that would be relatively straightforward, since everything's already in the hex grid database.
Yeah, and that report could also have like a metadata that shows what the filter criteria were or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chad, the bug that I'm seeing, kind of interesting. It's not just in the forum. I copied. Use this. This is Christina's filter, and looks like when it's turned on, it doesn't show anything. But if you edit it, that's when you can see the cells.
Hmm. That's
It's odd.
weird.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not.
that was working. A recent change broke that, I guess, because it
Huh.
was definitely working before.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
We had one question about the satellite map view. A satellite map view that doesn't clip the ocean detail. Can you open the satellite view?
Sure. So there's the Esri satellite data, right? Which sometimes is kind of nice. And then there's the map box imagery, which is cleaner, but doesn't show a lot of the reefs as well as the Esri imagery.
Mike, was there like a specific base layer you were looking for?
Not really. It's just, like you look at these maps on Google Earth and you could see the spur and groove structures and stuff like that. And you really just know right where you are, like if you're trying to draw polygons and stuff. So I was just wondering, it didn't really seem to be an option. I was just wondering.
Yeah, we don't have Google imagery in here, just Esri imagery and Mapbox imagery.
I've been looking at Google recently. We might be able to get that soon.
That would be great.
For a long time, their imagery was locked down to their own mapping client, but they changed that, and so we might be able to add that in the future.
So kind of along those lines, we've been exploring ways to get the topography displayed easily enough so that folks can view the reefscape, LiDAR, and bathymetry data. And there's a couple services that we haven't been able to utilize through NOAA, but we're going to be able to provide that once we get the state's new bathymetry layer. And that should also help visualize the seafloor quite well.
Great. So I'm not seeing any additional posts to the forum, but I'm going to assume that you figured it out. Again, let us know in the feedback form if things aren't working quite well for you. So I just wanted to, before we kind of wrap up or take general questions, just point out there is this administrative interface that the administrators to this tool have access to. This is where you can monitor activities. So here we're just looking at how much activity has happened in the last hour. Chad, as I was looking at this, I noticed folks are using Chrome and Edge, Windows, Mac, and all on desktops. Do you want to say a word about recommendations for browsers, operating systems, and devices?
Yeah. So I mean, it's supported on all modern browsers. I would say it's probably going to work best on a Chromium-based system like Chrome or Edge. But all modern browsers are supported, and we have support on mobile devices for viewing the data layers, sketching, digitizing things, and filtering is not really practical to use on a mobile device, but viewing data layers and forum content should be straightforward.
Right. with that, then I think I will just pause and see if there are any general comments or questions about anything in the tool. All right. Well, then I think I will post. Okay. Post the feedback form in the chat. If you've got time and you can spend the time now to provide feedback, great. Otherwise, as Nick said, I think we're hoping to have all the feedback in a couple of weeks. So he'll be reaching out to Pestry if we don't see responses piling up. But I just wanted to thank you all for participating. This has already been helpful to us in identifying some new features and some bugs. So we are getting something out of this already. Hopefully you did too. And I see one more question. Is there a layer to show where restoration has already occurred? Don't know of one. Does anybody else? Not
Brian,
yet.
did you want to handle that?
Yeah, I guess I want to say a few things. I didn't want to cut off Will, though.
No, please.
So a little bit about what we've put in here so far. We've put in data that was requested or part of the last marine planner, which was our Florida Reefs effort, designing, marine protected areas for the SEFGRI, our Florida Reefs region. So a lot of the base layers came from that. And so there's likely a lot of, and that was 10 years ago. So there's likely a lot of new layers and a lot of different layers up for consideration to put into the system. And so we definitely want feedback on what's missing. It can get really challenging if we put 1,000 layers in there, but so we'll need some consideration in terms of how, what gets in there eventually, but since this is geared towards coral restoration, there's a lot of stuff that's not in there yet. We just compiled and put in all of the coral data and the BCG stuff, which I noticed wasn't displaying right. And we have some other, we're putting in fish data, parrotfish data. We're still compiling a lot of things. The topography, all that stuff's coming in. But so I would say we definitely want feedback on what's missing. I will say also that the way we program the filtering was that we just used the empirical data. We didn't create any sort of interpolation maps of fish coral densities across space to try and like model anything. So when you select on filtering for coral species for coral richness or density, you're going to get just the specific monitoring, just the specific cells where the monitoring events have occurred over the last whatever period. I think it's 3 years, because we included N cramp, C cramp, and DRM into that. And so we could also take feedback into how people think that should be done, if they feel like there could be a better way to model those things over space. At this point, we were just selecting out, I think we chose the max, if I'm correct, the max value that occurred in any planning unit. So if there were multiple monitoring events in a same planning unit, we chose the max, but I believe we also have min and means if we wanted to choose those differently. So there's some different options that can be explored. We certainly want your feedback. It's also, we recognize that it's kind of rough, so we don't want you to necessarily, this can get frustrating if you're trying to type in every single possible change you can think of. So we will welcome anything you provide, but if you want to provide broad scale comments, those are fine, or any nitty gritty that you want to dive into is fine, but we recognize that you could be in a rabbit hole for hours if you went all in. So appreciate your help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I was going to mention also. You know, I appreciate everyone's help providing feedback. Like I said, I know it's a quick turnaround, and you know there are lots of ins and outs of the system. So even if, you know, based on your expertise, if you wanted to focus in on a certain aspect, you know, whether that's like the criteria for the reports for outplanting certain species, or if you're, you know, the data person and you're, you know, really knowledgeable about what potential layers or derived layers or things like that, or even ways to work with the data, you know, some of it, Chad showed those sliding scales, but if it makes more sense to bin the data, things like that, we're still really thinking and considering. So any of that will be extremely useful for us. Awesome. All right. So like I said, really appreciate everyone attending this. I will probably give everyone, you know, a week to play around with it. So expect an email from me next Monday, just kind of checking in and see where everyone is. In the time in between, if you want to send questions to me, I'll answer them the best I can. If they're better suited for Chad and Will, I'll pass them on to them and try to get those answered. So that way we can keep people moving in a forwardly direction and you know, make this tool as useful as possible. Were there any last questions or concerns or anything before we signed off for the day? Awesome. Well, good seeing everybody. Really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.